Since the 3rd of June, we've reported on the 4 Merseyside police constable who found themselves involved in a bar fight in which a man's head was allegedly used to smash a toilet at Ava's Bar on Renshaw Street here in Liverpool. Recently, they have all been facing court for their trial over the incident on charges of affray and actual bodily harm. Well, all 4 of the police constables involved, Paul Grimes, Sean Miley, Lucy Donaldson and John Thompson, were cleared of any wrongdoing by Preston Crown Court this week at the conclusion of their 3-week trial. All 4 plod were based at Edge Lane Police Station and were off duty at the time, celebrating with a colleague on the 28th of July 2020. Now, even though CCTV showed the alleged victim, Jack Bennett, being pushed into a toilet cubicle by Miley and Grimes, and after about a minute and a half, Miley and Grimes leaving the cubicle, followed by Bennett, who was then nursing a bloody nose, it happened out of the view of the camera, and so the judge and the jury decided that it wasn't enough evidence enough to prove that Miley and Grimes had been the ones to have done it. Because I'm sure they simply pushed Bennett into the cubicle to ask him to do that little trick he does where he punches himself in the face and makes his nose bleed. After the toilet incident, Bennett saw Thompson grappling with his brother and so picked up a glass and smashed it over Thompson's head, knocking him to the ground. For that, he was initially charged with wounding, but the charges were later dropped. All 4 of the police constables claimed that they had acted in self-defence and were using reasonable force after the incident kicked off. Rimmer, representing Grimes, and Philip Astbury, representing Miley, both said that Mr. Bennett had lied about what had happened in the toilet cubicle and even smashed it up himself during a separate 6-minute period when CCTV showed him re-entering the toilet alone after he had glassed Thompson. One of the police defendants was cleared with no case to answer after an application by his brief was made, which was accepted by the judge, but the judge is said to have allowed the jury to deliberate on the remaining 3. After around 10 hours of deliberation, the jury returned not guilty verdicts for each count on a majority decision, meaning that not all of the jurors were in agreement. Speaking after the case, Deputy Chief Constable Ian Critchley said, "We acknowledge the decision of the court, and whilst there is still one other matter outstanding in the Magistrates' Court involving one of the officers, we will now consider the actions of the officers under misconduct regulations. We expect the highest standards of integrity and behaviour from our officers, whether on or off duty, and will always investigate and take the necessary action if those standards fall short. It is vital that we maintain these standards so the public can have the confidence in us to provide a professional service with integrity, compassion and understanding." A spokesman for Merseyside Police said, despite the acquittals at Preston Crown Court yesterday, which was Wednesday the 31st of August, the officers' actions will be considered through misconduct proceedings. Disciplinary hearings rely on a lower threshold of proof than criminal trials and can lead to officers being sacked without notice and barred from policing jobs for life. Interesting. Now, of course, we never get to see things like the CCTV footage or anything like that, so we can only base our assumptions, our opinions on what we hear. It's interesting to hear that one of them got no case to answer. 3 of them then got their fate deliberated by a jury, which not all of them found them not guilty. And this is based on the fact that Mr. Bennett went into a toilet with 2 police constables off duty and then exited a minute and a half later with a bloody nose. And yet that doesn't prove anything. As I said, he's hardly going to say, "Hey lads, do you want to come and see a trick? I can make my nose bleed." I mean, what the fuck? If these people were using reasonable and necessary force, why would they need to push him into a toilet and go in the cubicle with him? Surely their police training would be able to allow them to deal with that situation without bundling somebody into a cubicle out of view of CCTV and then simply walking out and leaving him in there. Because that's what they did. They walked out whilst he was in there and he exited the cubicle after them. So if they were trying to restrain him or prevent any further damage, then why did they go into the cubicle and then walk out and leave him in there? Doesn't quite make sense. But again, these are the police, and I suppose the way things are going lately, if they keep sacking them, if they keep sacking police for beating people up, they're going to end up with none.